Let's get voice tips from a radio host. Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders, our many clients and friends. I'm Pramod Sharma, the actuary at Taxevity, and I help people transfer financial risks with life and health insurance. Our guest today is Poornima Mohan. Welcome, Poornima.
Thank you, Pramod. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. What do you do when you're not being interviewed?
I talk.
Okay.
Because I'm a radio host. So I basically earn my living through talking.
Which is great. And I'm glad you'll talk because this would be a pretty dull interview if you didn't. When were you first on air?
I went on air when I was 17.
Okay.
I started with the youth wing of All India Radio, which was Yupani. And then I went on to do other programs. And that's how I started.
And is All India Radio a major network?
In the time that I was growing up, it was the only thing available because it was government controlled, the whole media. So we had no private channels. So.
Okay, you started at the top then. Do you have a routine you follow before you go on air?
Yes, I do. And in fact, I think every person who's striving to be a good radio host should have one. There are a few exercises that you can do.
Okay.
And there are certain things that you can take care of before you go on air.
Okay, can you give us an example of an exercise that you might do?
Yeah. One is you take a deep breath and you say,
Okay.
and the voice, actually the sound, it should come from your stomach.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And that helps you in opening up your passage, the lungs, and your voice gets a better quality.
Okay, and you would do that once then or more than once?
I think we should do it at least 5 times.
Okay.
And there's another exercise which you should do, because as we age, we start eating our words. In fact, some of the people, even when they're young and they're in a hurry to say everything that they had to say, they eat up their words.
What do you mean by eating up words?
Like in Hindi, I'll give you an example. We say कि वो कर रहे हैं और दिल से कर रहे हैं.
Okay.
So you are like overlapping words or you're eating words.
Okay.
And on radio, it sounds awful. If you listen carefully, that you'll find that the good radio host will never do that.
Okay. So does this have to do with enunciation then? Or
Also enunciation, but also because they're in a hurry. When you're doing this, what happens is that you slow down the frequency of words that you are speaking in a minute.
Okay, and that's because of the vocal exercise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's another exercise that as we age, the muscles of our mouth, like every other muscle in the body, they get a little loose.
Okay.
So to tighten them and to maintain the same voice quality, this is the exercise that you should do. Like you take out your tongue. Like clockwise, and then.
Okay, then counterclockwise also.
Counterclockwise.
And what is that exercise achieving?
It tightens the muscles of your tongue and your cheeks here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So with age, you might have noticed that some people cannot talk properly because the tongue becomes loose. The muscles here in the cheek and the tongue and the gums, they become loose. So to avoid that, and good actors like Amitabh Bachchan, who's famous for his voice, they still do it till this day, every morning.
Okay, these exercises are not something you can stop once you get to a certain stage.
No,
then.
I think with age you should do them more because you're losing all that tightness in yourself, in your muscles.
When you're on air, how do you speak without making flubs?
Pramod, I think that comes with experience more and more.
Okay.
But in the beginning, it's always better to have a written script.
Okay.
Because that way you are eliminating the risk of fumbling for words.
Right.
So it's if you are going to talk on a particular topic, or if it's a Bollywood-based show, like most of the time I do, I still I don't do it right now, but it's better to have sort of script written down.
Well, I'm just wondering, I guess you probably would practice the script, but do you read it in a different way because you're reading it aloud than you would if you were just reading it to yourself?
Of course, you have to put the emotions in it.
Okay.
Yeah, and as we were talking earlier, that when you are on radio, you have to emote with your voice. Your voice is the only thing. You don't have any makeup, you don't have good clothes to show off, and all you have is your voice. So all the emotions, whether it's anger or happiness or romance or flirting around, whatever it is, it has to come through your voice.
There's a certain intimacy that comes from listening to the radio.
Yes.
Because, yeah, you're just hearing that sound.
Definitely.
Can you give us an example of how you might emote?
Okay, so you want me, but I'll give you an example in Hindi.
Sure.
Okay, like suppose we are talking about a Bollywood gossip. So I would say, and in fact I did this the other day on my show, रणवीर कपूर और कटरीना कैफ ने सुनता है कि लंदन में एंगेजमेंट कर ली है. अब इस अफवाह में कितना सच है कितना नहीं ये तो हम नहीं जानते, लेकिन हम इतना ज़रूर जानते हैं कि कहीं अगर आग लगती है तो धुआं ज़रूर उठता है.
Okay, right, because you didn't just read those words, you added a lot of emotion to them.
Yeah, that you have to do. Otherwise, your connection with your listeners will be lost. You have to make a connection. They should feel that you are living. Sorry, you are like they should feel that you are sitting in their living room and talking to them.
Okay.
Like each one should feel that you are talking to him or her. And if you get that sort of feedback from your listeners, that means you're doing a good job.
Okay, yes, and that would take some skill to get to that level.
And a lot of practice.
And practice, yes.
Yeah.
But did you ever feel self-conscious? Say the example you gave us where you're saying things in different ways. Is that something that just came naturally to you, or did you have to consciously work on it?
I think it's both ways. I've been on stage since I was 5 years old.
Right.
So maybe it's become a second nature, but till this day, I think I'm learning.
Okay.
You have to, you cannot just sit back and enjoy on your past laurels. So you have to keep working. I would say that I'm still a student.
I find that sometimes when I'm using a microphone, I don't think it's happening so much right now, but say when I'm just talking to my computer, trying to record something, I find that I run out of breath and then I can hear myself breathing. Are there techniques you use to avoid that?
Pramod, that's a very good question. In fact, it happened with me right now.
Oh.
But yes, it's something to be addressed. And when I was working with All India Radio, they actually taught us to control our breath.
Okay.
And the way to do is that when I'm talking to you and one sentence and then next sentence, you take a nanosecond gap.
Okay.
And now I've started, so that breath didn't come.
Okay.
And you have to do it. If you notice the songs of yesteryear, when Lata Mangeshkar is singing a song and she takes a long alap, you don't hear any.
No.
But the singers of today, you can hear like that.
Why is that? Are the standards dropping?
I think it's not the standards. I think people who are coming to singing these days, most of them don't have a classical background.
Okay.
And people who are coming to radio also don't have any training.
Okay.
So, because these are very fine nuances which have to be taught or which have to be pointed out to you before by somebody who's an expert. And I was very lucky that I started my career with All India Radio, which is comparable to BBC.
Because sometimes if you're doing things on your own, because nowadays with podcasting and video, etc., you can do things on your own. You don't always notice that you're doing something that isn't quite right. And even if you notice, you don't know what to do about it.
Well, then these are the tips that few tips that I gave you. And I think anybody who's watching the interview can benefit from that.
Definitely. I've picked up some tips myself.
Thank you.
What about food and beverages? Are there certain things that we should avoid before recording?
I think we'll start with what not to do.
Sure.
Very cold water. Don't drink very cold water. In fact, it's better that you have like a lukewarm water.
Okay, and why is that?
Cold water might, constrict your vocal cords,
Okay.
and some people have very sensitive throats. So
Okay. Is there anything else that we should avoid?
avoid pickles.
Pickles.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they might give you a sore throat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like a lot of hot things anyway. That wouldn't be a problem for
So
me. What about milk?
Milk, I don't think makes any difference.
Okay,
But
'cause-
what I find is that you should not eat anything which makes your stomach heavy, and sometimes milk does that.
Okay. Because sometimes it causes phlegm, but I guess it depends on the person themselves.
Yeah, it depends on the person. But don't eat anything which makes you heavy, because your voice gets affected once once your stomach is too full.
Mm-hmm.
Your voice does get affected because you're feeling a
Little relaxed, maybe.
yeah.
Okay, and are there certain foods that we should take prior to?
Like I said, lukewarm water. For me, coffee works great.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a few sips of coffee, hot coffee, before I start my program in the morning.
Okay. Is there a key message you would like to leave with our audience today?
Just be yourself.
Okay, that's great advice, but sometimes it feels hard to do that because you've got all this strange technology around you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just practice then?
It is practice, and also when you're going to going on air or podcast or whatever you're
Right.
doing, just think that first of all, everybody doesn't have the courage. So you have the courage to do so.
Okay.
So that's one advantage you have. That at least you have the courage to go on air and deliver your message. How many people can actually do that?
Right, that's a good point.
And also that everybody has a different style of speaking. But the only thing that differentiates a good host from a not so good host
Right.
is that the good hosts, they pay attention to those fine nuances that we just talked about, and they also know what they're going to talk about.
Okay, what do you mean by that? They know what they're going to talk about.
Say, suppose you have a talk show.
Yes.
So then you have, even if you don't write the whole script, you write a few significant points and you cover them one by one, so that your talk show is not without any purpose. You are not going off the tangent.
Okay, yes.
And if it's a Bollywood-based show, then also suppose you have to talk about a particular actor or a particular song, then you write a few words about that song or a few words about that actor,
Okay.
so that you are able to give more information to your listeners. And one thing, that whenever you're going on air, just smile, because a smile cannot be seen, but it can be heard.
Okay.
So when I go on air in the morning, and when I'm, bringing that lever down and pushing the lever up of my microphone, I smile. I actually smile.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because that smile goes in my voice.
Interesting.
So when I say on my radio show that sabhi ko pyar bhara namaskar, so it's namaskar, good morning. So that
Okay.
emotion is there, and unless you're feeling that emotion, it will not come in your voice.
Interesting. You've given us a lot of tips. What's the best way for people to reach you?
They can go to my website,
Okay.
and they can also call me at 416-695-1330.
Okay, and we'll put that information on the screen also.
Thank you so much, Pramod.
Thanks very much for dropping by.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?